Welcome to the MasterMINED Club, your ultimate gateway into the world of Bitcoin mining. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale your operations, our vibrant community of like-minded enthusiasts is here to support you every step of the way. Join us for weekly sessions led by industry pros, where you'll exchange ideas, brainstorm strategies, and stay motivated on your mining journey. From heat management to site optimization, our monthly deep dives cover the technical know-how you need to succeed. And with access to our entire back catalog, you'll never miss a beat. But that's not all. Our members enjoy exclusive one-on-one sessions with veteran miners, plus direct access to special pre-sales and insider opportunities at Bitcoin Mining World. Ready to take your mining to the next level? Join the MasterMINED Club today and secure your spot in the future of Bitcoin mining. Visit bitcoinminingworld.com or scan the QR code now. And now back to the show.
What is up, Bitcoin miners? Good morning. Good morning. I hope everyone is doing wonderful. I'm doing amazing. It is a beautiful day. It's a beautiful wet day over here on the Oregon coast. And, you know, I'm really excited about what we're doing here, the community that we're building, all of the people who are jumping into the MasterMINED Club and trying to learn how to build out their Bitcoin mining operations. It's a lot of fun watching. I'm very bullish on the mining industry, from the pleb side all the way to the industrial side. We've got a really special presentation planned today. A lot of things are happening. We've got Joe Lively. He is the Chief Operations Officer at Abundant Mines, but he wasn't always the Chief Operations Manager or Chief Operations Officer at Abundant Mines. He was actually in the robotics industry. He's been in the robotics industry for 10 plus years. He finally quit his fiat job, and now he's working full-time in the mining industry. I have watched this man go from fully in the robotics fiat world to going completely Bitcoin mining in the last year. And it's been incredible to watch his journey. So we're going to highlight that journey. He's going to tell us about how he's done it. He's going to talk a lot about some of the challenges, the things that he's had to overcome. He's going to talk about some of his wins. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a really good presentation. We've got a couple other things planned too. We have a cryo block giveaway that we're going to be doing between the presentation and the questions and answers segment. So if you haven't signed up for the cryo block, I'm going to share the cryo block QR code one more time. That's the QR code. Go to Viral Sweep, sign up, because you will have a chance to win that CryoBlock hybrid cooling unit. It's a great kit. It's allowing you to upgrade your S19 from air-cooled to hydro-cooled. I actually have a kit down here that I'm looking at right now. It's a really cool piece of art is what I want to call it, but I know that it's not art. But, you know, what I'm getting at is that CryoByte Labs, Ryan Raminger, they've put a lot of R&D into this unit to allow you to overclock your machines, get a little bit of that efficiency out of it, pull some more juice from your stock S19s, and do it in a way that doesn't break the bank. So if you don't win, I'd really, just advise everybody, like, go to cryobytelabs.com, purchase yourself a CryoBlock hybrid unit, and try to see if you can overclock your machines more than you were. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that. Again, here is the QR code. I'm going to share the link to that as well right there. So scrolling across the bottom of your screen is the link if you don't have a phone to scan the QR code. All right, so a couple other things before we get started. I am the only one here today. So John is out today and Scott is on vacation. So it's just me, but we're going to be fine. I'm going to be able to rock this. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be great. I'm super excited. Joe is a personal friend of mine, and I always love talking to the guy. He's just a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge. So I see some comments are coming in. Let's see. Scott is watching. We've got Ron in the chat. We've got Alex Churchill. Dan's in the chat as well. Giovanni. See anybody else? Throw in your comments. I'd love to answer it. Thank you, Alex. The setup is nice. It's been a work in progress. I appreciate you for noticing. We got our books in the background. We got an S19 over here. It's awesome. Anyways, guys, I just want to tell you a couple of things that Bitcoin mining world is doing over the next couple months. First and foremost, I am going to be in Denver. It's going to be too late for you guys to get out there. If you're going to Denver, it's going to be a lot of fun. If you've already purchased your tickets, I'll be there for the Heat Punk Summit Undermine. Super excited for that event. It's all signal, super bullish. So I'm not really going to talk too much about that. But one thing that Bitcoin mining world is doing specifically is on March 11th, we are doing a virtual conference, Bitcoin Mining World Virtual Conference, all mining. We're going to be bringing in people like Bob Burnett, David Branscombe. We've got Epic coming in. We've got Ocean coming in to talk to you about how to eke a little bit of efficiency out of your Bitcoin mining operation, how to build a mining operation, how to, set up the firmware, set up the hardware, maybe how you're going to do containers. We've got all kinds of stuff. We're going to be bringing in Dan Kohler's on the call today. He's going to be talking about, waste to energy, talking about that tire mine that he's working on. Either way, we've got a lot of great people to come in and talk to us, have these presentations about Bitcoin mining. And that's what we live and breathe here. That is our bread and butter. We love talking about education and Bitcoin mining related activities. So if you guys want to join that virtual conference, I'm going to put up a link right. Oh, yeah, there it is. Oh, hey, so that link that's been going across the bottom of the screen, that's not for the viral sweep. I apologize. That is for the virtual conference. So that's the virtual conference. Go sign up. It's $21 a ticket. You can't beat that price. $21. Come join us for a full day of learning how to build a Bitcoin mining operation. Again, some of the speakers, we've got Bob Burnett, we've got Ocean, we've got David Branscombe, we've got Dan Kohler, we have Epic's blockchain solutions. So all kinds of great people, great speakers are going to be there. Now, because I wasn't sharing it earlier, I want to share one more time. This is the correct link for the viral sweepstake that we're doing for the cryo block at the end of this mastermind session. So I'm going to let that scroll across the screen for a little bit. All right. Let's see. What else do we have? We are doing in Fort Lauderdale during the Mining Disrupt. Bitcoin Mining World is doing a happy hour, a after party that I don't seem to have the link for. I'm looking for it, guys. Apologize. Bear with me. Okay, I don't see it in here, but hey, anyways, look on our socials. We've got it posted all over the place. Maybe Scott will share it here in the chat. But we have a after party that we're doing with Mining Mafia. So if you guys are going to be in Mining Disrupt, come out to that after party, say hi to us, shake some hands. It's going to be a great opportunity just to, mix and mingle with some Bitcoin miners. Awesome. Well, the last thing I want you guys to do, if you're not part of our mastermind club, we meet every Friday. Give or take every Friday. Sometimes we have some things that we're doing and we can't, I'm going to be in Denver this Friday, so I won't be meeting with you guys, but maybe Scott will hop on. Either way, we meet every other Friday, roughly every Friday, and have these deep dives where we bring on industry experts and leaders to talk to you about Bitcoin mining so that you can build a stronger foundation moving into the future. We believe at Bitcoin Mining World that the Bitcoin mining future is grand, and we need to educate the entrants. We need to educate the newcomers, because if you have a strong education around it, a strong background, you can build a sustainable Bitcoin mining operation. So with all of that said, let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's mastermind deep dive. I'm going to bring up our presenter, Joe. Joe, welcome to the mastermind deep dive. How are you today, brother?
I'm doing really great, Trevor. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're happy to have you, man. As I kind of alluded to earlier, you are someone I deeply admire. Your innovation, your dedication to the Bitcoin mining industry. You're a dear friend. We've known each other for a little bit over a year now, and I think that watching your journey, going from being fully in the robotics industry and wanting to get into Bitcoin mining to really transitioning completely out of the fiat mindset, out of the fiat world, and into Bitcoin mining fully and completely. I mean, you're the chief operations officer for Abundant Mines. Just give briefly, tell us what that experience has been like.
It's so cool you mentioned the time frames. I don't know and most people haven't worked in an industry so young. We have this old joke inside our company. We kind of work in dog years. 1 year in Bitcoin is like 7 years in the real life and stuff. And it really is true. Like you think about some of the earlier industries, like even the internet. If you were around in 1995 to 1997 to 2000, you could have really made your name for yourself in that industry. We're kind of at the same point here in Bitcoin mining. Like we are very young. And to basically spend 4 years in it for you guys to call me a leader, I think that's awesome. But it's not just specific to Bitcoin mining. What I mean by that, you think back 100-something years ago, Henry Ford started his company in 1903. By 1908, he was going through and doing full assembly lines and running cars off this thing at a very quick pace, literally being the de facto leader in the world of automobile manufacturing in 5 years. That's where we're at right now. So the things that we're doing today, the fact that people are showing up on this call to learn about these types of things, you guys are going to be the leaders. And it really does start with education. It starts with learning. It starts with just thinking that you could do something like this, which has been the biggest thing for me on the journey.
Yeah, there are no certifications in Bitcoin. You just have to have a desire and a will to learn and put that education that you've got to the test by actually applying it to the real world. And that is something that you have done. We're going to, I'm going to give you the stage here in a second. We're going to let you kind of present what you're going to be doing today. Kind of tell us about your presentation. What are some of the things that people can look forward to in this deep dive?
Sure. I wanted to kind of tell a little bit of a narrative. Not a lot of people get to see from the beginning to the end process. And it was one of those things that I actually started a couple years ago, and I had some really big ups, some really big downs as part of it. So I kind of wanted to tell it through a narrative, show some images, explain some tips and things that worked out really well for me, and some things that kind of went really sideways that could have derailed the entire project, and just kind of give some inspiration to people to let them know that they can actually do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think showing some of the pitfalls, some of the roadblocks that you've had is very important. Everybody talks about Bitcoin mining. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. And, all the FUD aside, all of the excitement aside, it is a very difficult industry, and not just because our revenues are cut in half every 4 years, but also because you have a lot of competition with the other people in the network just trying to get some of that Bitcoin. And then you also throw in the fact that we're dealing with hardware, we're dealing with all these different moving parts, and putting them together to create a Bitcoin mining facility, even in such a short time. I mean, if you think about it, from Greenfield to operation, you've been doing this for 4 months, less than 4 months. It feels like, and you are now getting ready to move on your next Greenfield. So it's going to be a great conversation, a great presentation. I just want to highlight to everyone, we are doing a Q&A at the end of this. So if you have any questions for Joe, maybe myself, I mean, I don't know why you would ask me questions, but ask Joe some questions and we will answer those questions. This is going to be a good presentation. If you're thinking about building a Bitcoin mining facility soon, this is going to be the presentation for you. So with that, Joe, I'm going to kick it over to you. I'm going to hop off the screen. I'll be here if you need me, and we'll just get into it.
Sounds great. Thanks again, Trevor, for having me here. It's really kind of poetic, I guess. You mentioned education and how that's kind of a cornerstone to a lot of this. A lot of what is happening here in Bitcoin mining world, I've been a part of kind of in the back end. Like one of my first events that I went to as far as a conference was a conference that was put on by Scott back in 22. And I ended up meeting the actual CEO of the company that I work with now, Bo Turner of Abundant Minds. And we're both in Oregon, and we were kind of had a similar path. And he was going to build his little mine out. I was going to build mine out. And that was going to be cool because we're in Oregon and we can kind of help each other. But the networks and the communication I learned in just working with Scott through his boot camps, through his operation trainings, going to visit in person in Milwaukee and getting my hands on actual ASICs for the first time, all that was kind of required to give me the confidence to be able to do this. Before I jumped into that whole process, I was a pleb. I was building things in my garage. I had a heat ducting system that went into my furnace. I was trying to modify for efficiency. I was unplugging the dryer and running my ASICs on top of the dryer when we weren't drying clothes. All the things a lot of people are currently doing is where I kind of started as well. And then I tried to go through and do hosting. I outgrew my little area here. I wanted to get some more. And I just learned that our industry is young and there wasn't a lot of great providers out there that offered good service that you can trust. You can go through and give them large amounts of money and they would do what they said they were going to do. And that's when I realized I wanted to go through and kind of elevate the industry. I know it sounds a little crazy, but we're young. There's only a handful of really good co-location companies out there. And even saying really good is tough back then. We're getting better as an industry. But I knew, having roots in customer service and being an educator, that I think I could relate to the types of people who were like me, who wanted to mine, but outgrew their at-home roots and needed to be able to have lower power prices, larger facilities. And that's what I kind of wanted to do. So that's why I started this journey. And it's been about 2.5 years in the making. So I'm going to kind of dive in here a little bit. And on the left-hand side is how we started. It was literally a Greenfield site. Grass is tall as my waist. I was able to walk through it. It's kind of like the whole Russell Crowe scene in Gladiator, running my hands through all the grass. It was cool. Over on the right, we went through and fired up in January of this year. And we've got the thing almost loaded up all the way now, which is pretty awesome. But before we got into anything as far as construction, there was a lot of work we had to do some planning. And that was really where a lot of the education came in. The saying is, you don't know what you don't know. And I had to learn that. So one of the first things is everyone always assumes just form an LLC to go through and build a business. And that's true. But looking at the tax environment, or the tax ramifications of that, was pretty important. Did I want to be an S Corp? Did I want to be a C Corp? Do I keep all my funds from the Bitcoin that's mined in the same entity as where I had my properties and my infrastructure? And going through and doing a lot of discussion and learning, I was able to figure out that making 2 separate entities to be able to store revenue earned in digital coins and digital assets versus having another entity that held the property and real infrastructure was a pretty good strategy. Just going through some bumps and bruises in the digital landscape in 22 when things kind of went sideways and there were a lot of exchanges closing, banks closing, and things like that. I was very happy I had my entities in 2 separate groups. It really worked out for me there. Had I had them all in one group, I might actually had some of my property and infrastructures at risk from some of the shenanigans that happened in the digital exchange space. So definitely pay attention to that. Don't just do it in your own name. Do some research into that and make sure you're going through and setting up in a right way to protect yourself and your business. The next thing I learned that was super important is I cannot do this all on my own. Like, absolutely I went into this thinking, oh, what's so hard? It's a transformer and a container. I got a 1-wire diagram. How hard can this be? It is extremely hard. Once I started to learn a little bit about this, I realized that there are 2 different sides to the coin on people who might want to get into this career. The people who are maybe Bitcoin enthusiasts, people who love Bitcoin, who go, hey, I want to go through and build a mine. That's cool. And they kind of work behind their desk. They do their little spreadsheet things. And then you have the trades. You've got the contractors, the electrical, the real estate people who are used to that. And over the past couple of years, what I found is it's much easier to have someone who has that kind of in the field experience to be able to transition to learn a little bit about Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining and put one of these things up than it is to go from someone who has spent their life behind a computer or worked in technical and maybe just done a little bit of Bitcoin and they're like super pumped about it and want to do this. It's a lot harder transition to go from that over to digging ditches in a field and going through and running heavy electrical and dealing with the heavy equipment and all that stuff than it is just to take a week to bring someone up to speed on what the Bitcoin network is, how mining works, and how they're incentivized. And then letting them rely on their 20-something years of experience of building out job sites that have nothing to do with Bitcoin. Finding the right key players is important, from your EC, your general contractor, real estate agent, lawyer, and then when you get into actually setting up the Bitcoin container, a network engineer. These are all people you need to have on your side. because there's not a lot of people in this world that have that skill set that can do every one of those things. One of the things that people tend to get hung up on, and me included, was you got to find the right site to start. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be an excellent location. It's got to be convenient. It's got to have 3-cent power. It's got to have all these things. And I had a lot of coaches along the way say, Joe, just get started. Pick one that's good enough. And from there, you can start to go through and build and grow. I wish I'd listened to that advice. I won't call it a waste because I learned a lot of stuff, but I spent an extra 1.5 years looking for that right site, looking for that right partnership, trying to go through and find just the right spot with the best power rates. And I set myself probably back 1.5 years in being able to go through and start this endeavor. All the while, I was working a full-time job during that process. And so I'm trying to do the research, go to classes, do trips, manage a pretty successful company that I was with before. And it was tough. It put a lot of stress on me during that process. But what I found is there really is no best site to start. The best site is the one you're working on that day. Whether it's the best power rates, it doesn't really matter. As long as it works for your models, go for it. So what do I mean by that? I did a lot of research and a lot of spreadsheet warrior work. I went through and talked with hundreds, I wouldn't say 160 different power companies and modeled out hundreds of different schedules across 3 or 4 different states. Tried to figure out which ones at least were palatable for me. Which ones had the all-in rate that would make sense that, alrighty, I could see myself running a company with this type of cash flow, this type of revenue. Once I had all those out, I went through and kind of modeled it out to like, okay, where's my cutoff point? Where's the point in which I just can't do it anymore? Broke those out, and that's where I started going to visit in person. One of the main issues that you'll probably come across is when you just call up a power company or a utility, they're almost going to blow you off. They set up gatekeepers. They set up ways to prevent you from getting the answers to your question. $1,000 to go through and have an agreement to be able to answer how much capacity do you have. $5,000 to talk to the lead engineer to find out if they need to upgrade their substation. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of due diligence, but that due diligence will pay off once you go through and you start working on the site itself. So the site I ended up doing was, believe it or not, less than an hour away from me. It took me looking in Texas, Oklahoma, Canada, up in another state north of me before I settled on a site that was good enough for me to go through and do this. Close was probably the best thing I could have done. Me wanting to go through and have my hands in it and not just cut a check to have someone build me a site was really the best thing I could have done for myself. I had explored partnering with some very reputable companies in Texas. Scott was instrumental in helping me try to find a partner. He introduced me to 5 or 6 different people in Mississippi, Pennsylvania, Washington, and it just wasn't quite the right fit for me. Trust is a tough thing in this industry. We got a really low bar that we're trying to overcome and raise up. And it was difficult to say, hey, here's my containers I just spent $250,000 on. Good luck. Don't mess it up. And I also wanted to be part of that journey as well. I really, pardon the pun, dug the idea of being on site and learning how it works and talking with the contractors and getting their insights. And some of the contractors probably got a little annoyed with me, asking questions constantly about their industry, about their equipment, about all those things. And it was fun though. And after a while, I got to teach them about Bitcoin mining. My contractor, our utility guys, our subs, all of them now are getting hash, which is pretty cool. And I was able to kind of help orange pill them through mining and relating to their side of it, which I thought was a fun part. The site itself, we basically started with an empty field. And from there, we were able to kind of start tearing things down. One of the things people don't tell you is how expensive gravel and hauling gravel in is. If you're planning really greenfield, plan a lot of money for site prep and getting it done correctly to make sure that the base that you lay down is going to give a good foundation for what you plan to build out. When budgeting, I have a couple things I want to mention, just some really good tips. It's one thing to throw it all on a spreadsheet, a pro forma, and work out all these energy rates you have and how much money you can make in Bitcoin and trying to adjust for difficulty adjustments, or if you're co-locating, what price works well for you and your clients. But one of the best things I've learned is use other people's money when you're building it out. The whole goal of what we're trying to do here is get more Bitcoin. In my mind, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to exchange fiat dollars that can be printed out of nothing to get more Bitcoin. Now, if I could go to a bank and just say, hey, I would like to borrow $800,000 and then go buy Bitcoin with it, I probably would have done that. That's easy. It's fun. You just go through and do it. But you're never going to get, banks are not going to lend you money to go through and buy Bitcoin at this point in our journey. The same with actual ASICs. I want to start a mining business. I love the idea of it. I want to be part of it. I want to get it at a wholesale rate. I want to defend the network and be all that. Mr. Bank, can I borrow $500,000 and buy ASICs? No, you can't do that either. What banks will do, though, is they will lend on things they understand. They will lend on property. They will lend on warehouses. They will lend on infrastructure costs like metering cabinets and switchgear and transformers, labor, electrical costs. They see that every single day. And so that's one of my best tips is, even if you have a little bit of the fiat available or Bitcoin, go to traditional sources. If you're building out a site, you can get lending for it. When planning your budget, there is an old adage, it's going to take twice as long and cost twice as much. It's true. I won't say twice, but when you get towards the end of a project, there's a lot of things that happen in the budgeting that really go out the window. You're so close and, oh man, that part's not going to get here. Let's rush it over. Or it's only available there, but it's $3,000 more. It's just $3,000. Let's buy that. Oh, what do you mean? It's going to take 4 more weeks to get this. You said it was going to be there in 2. Can I rush it? Those things start to happen. And at the end, you spend money at a much more rapid pace than you do at the beginning with your perfectly curated budgets that you set forth. And then finally, as I said, the whole point of what we're doing here is to make more Bitcoin. Don't sell your Bitcoin in order to go through and pay this. Use fiat dollars. Find someone to invest in you, angel investors, SBA, local community banks. Don't sell your Bitcoin. The containers I bought were $180,000. I was actually at Scott's operations course when I bought those. And Bitcoin was $18,000 a piece at the time. Had I used Bitcoin to do that, that would have been 10 Bitcoin. I'd be sitting on $1 million of containers for 1.8 megawatts. Not the best use of funds. Don't sell your Bitcoin, use fiat. The process was awesome. Things that started to make it real was when the heavy equipment, things that I paid $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 started arriving on site. That was like, oh my gosh, this is actually starting to happen. Don't underestimate the amount of heavy equipment that you need in order to build out a greenfield site. Cranes, tractors, bobcats, trenchers, all kinds of different types of things are needed in order to make this development happen. As much as we're in the mining business, you're not going to do it with a pick and shovel. Some of the things that surprised me is conduits and stuff, how large they really are. 5-inch conduits are just as big as you think it is. But when you order something like a 90-degree bend, you're thinking like a little 90-degree thing that's about that big. These sweeps are huge, and being able to make them work into the utility boxes was a lot more challenging than I expected. But once it starts to come together, it really is inspiring. You know, getting the teams of people on there, the dump trucks, the electrical, laying the conduit. I'm in the ditches, connecting these things myself because I wanted to really have hands-on and see what that process was like. It was really fun, but tiring. You know, I was an hour away, so commutes each day were an hour there, hour back. It was the summer when we started, luckily, so 100-degree days, 110-degree days sometimes, dehydrated. Lunch breaks were a little long for the crew. I take the crew out and, you know, get them some food and stuff like that to make sure everyone's feeling good about the process. But it was fun. things that you don't even expect. This is how naive I was at one point, guys. I had the document engineer from the container manufacturer, they gave me a one-wire diagram to connect the transformer to the, or one-line diagram as they call it, to connect the transformer to the digital shovel pods that I was using at the time. I had no idea the amount of work it takes to go 10 feet from a transformer into the switchgear where all of the mobile data center connects to all your containers. It was a monstrosity. We took 12 different conduits laid in there. They're 4-inch conduits. And we had to build this thing outside of the trench, duct tape the whole thing together to make sure it met code. It had to be 1.5 inches spaced apart. So we used 2x4s to go through and create the spacing and then go through and drop it into the ditch. I had a team of engineers trying to figure this out because no one had done this before in this area, small rural town. And it was just so crazy watching all these big brain people try to figure this out. They thought they could do it in like a couple days. It took like 3 weeks of planning. Still no real idea on how to do it. The local general contractor had a friend who was helping us out on site because he thought it was cool. He's the one who kind of engineered this whole thing up in about an hour. Said, well, why can't we just do this and space it together and build it outside and drop it in? The entire electrical team that I paid a lot of money for was trying to build this in the trench and figure out how to do it and meet code at the same time. So while it's nice to pay people that you really trust, sometimes the guy down the street who's done things like this for years is the best guy to ask. Once we got the stub ups in, I was really excited. That point allowed me to start going through and getting the concrete pads in place, really organizing how we're going to get the switchgear in there and planning all that process out. But again, this point, everything started to get backfilled and I could drive again on the lot, which was awesome. You've heard me mention a couple times containers. There are really a few different options when building out a site. They all have their pros and cons, and I'm not going to spend too much time into it. We chose mobile data centers for a couple reasons. It's expensive to build in Oregon. Building permits are like $6,000. There are so many extra rules. There's a lot of ADA and requirements that have to be there that if I would have gone through and put a foundation in for this process, I would have probably added another $30,000 as part of it. So I went with the mobile data center so I can go through and basically be without a pad. In doing so, I didn't even need a building permit. It was straight up an electrical permit because the containers themselves in our county are counted as pieces of electrical, no different than a switchgear or a transformer. And so it's not a building. It's just a bunch of breakers that happen to be aligned in a corridor, which was cool. And had I not known that, it would have taken a lot longer and cost a lot more money as part of that process. We did look at different types of warehouses. In fact, this week we're going, working with Abundant Minds, and we're going up to look at a place about an hour north of me that is pre-built, and then another one that's about 3 hours away that we actually have an LOI in. We're going to be doing that acquisition soon. The one we're looking up here, though, is already an existing warehouse. We're looking at it just out of sheer interest. It sounds interesting. Power rate's okay, a little higher than I'm at here, but 1 megawatt, but it's 208 voltage. And get this, in order to go through and get the best rate they could, instead of going into above a megawatt, they have 15 meters. That's right, 15 separate meters, 15 electrical bills, all for one little warehouse that's 1 megawatt. They essentially gamed the system in order to keep it in a smaller loads for each of these individual meters. I just want to see this thing. I just want to see how they did it. It's for sale and we're going to look at it, but I don't know if it's the best use of funds. And I don't want to deal with 15 power bills. One giant power bill is bad enough. 15 little power bills, I don't know. So there's a lot that goes into with retrofits, a lot of extra stuff. We'd have to go through and step up from 208 to 240. A lot of extra builds that you want to kind of keep an eye out for. Building is something we will be doing. Honestly, it's the best part about it. Containerized solutions are great for getting in and monetizing and giving yourself flexibility if you need to get out for some reason. But I want to build some warehouses. I want to have a repair centers, an educational space. I want to build it properly so that I'm bringing air intake from both sides of the warehouse and then exhausting out the top, which really allows you to maximize your cooling, minimize the noise, increase your density on the property. It's a much better way to build, but a higher cost per megawatt than going through and doing a mobile deployment. So I mentioned I didn't have to do foundations. We ended up doing piers and going through and pouring in place. So we went through, set up the forms, and got those ready. The mobile data centers that we chose, we wanted to be able to have a lot of flexibility. So instead of having one that was 40 feet, 53 feet, or whatever, we got ones that were 8 foot by 8 foot that can be bolted together to create a string of about 2 megawatts worth of ASICs. It was fun. Again, a lot of quick. Look at this thing. This is a boom tractor. It extends out 24 feet. And so we're able to go through and place these pods all along these pre-done piers that we had. And the cool thing about that is it allowed us to mount from the side. The first one we did from the back, but the side allowed us to go through and easily place each one of these side by side, bolt them together, and place the next one. Because we couldn't place them from the front or back because the forks on our other pieces of equipment were just too short, and the extenders just weren't really an option for us. Flying in the equipment after the pads were placed was one of the funnest parts. Giant cranes going through and bolting down, lifting off the ground to lift these heavy equipments like the transformer, the primary metering cabinet, and the PME. Fun to see. It was also 20 degrees that day, and I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me because of all the fog. But that's part of building a project in Oregon when it starts to get into hunting season. Transformer in place. We had to bring in another piece of equipment to move the transformer after we landed it. That was one of the worst things that happened as far as our project setbacks. We went through and did preformed pads, and we actually had to move the transformer twice because of code issues that came up about it with part of the process, which I'll mention in a second. Mapping this out would have been something that would have been more beneficial to me. Because I never really built one from grass to hash before, I really had an idea of what I wanted, but I didn't use any project management tools. I was essentially the PM for this project and guiding the general contractors, the electrical, all the hands that had their hands in this as part of it. And I would have been better by getting everyone in a room at the beginning and having everyone understand their part. Showing what the milestones are, where their potentials for slippage are, where the mission critical timelines are. I didn't really do that. I kept everyone kind of separate. You know, the contractors did the contractors, electrical did electrical, utility did a utility. And that was really a mistake on my part. Getting everyone together and talking and communicating would have shaved probably weeks, if not a month, off of the project. So this was my big faux pas for the project. Probably set us back a few weeks. Everyone told us get precast pads. It'll save you a week in time on cure. The precast wasn't quite set right for how we went through and did the stub ups. We couldn't rotate the pad because it would have created code violation from either the front of the transformer opening up into the containers or the back of the fins, the cooling section, preventing the ability to have 6 feet of clearance between the containers and the transformers. That was a big issue. We went through and cut it around to see if the inspector would be okay with that. And he looked at it and said, "No, Joe, stop it. You can't do that." So we had to go through, pull the pad off, pull the transformer off, build a vault in place. So we cut all those stubs down below the ground, moved it down 2 feet, formed it up, poured the concrete, let it set. So essentially we made a vault. Then we were able to go through and put that pad back on there. And there was enough clearance from where the cables came in to roll in the 4-aught into the connections on the transformer. Inspector gave us a thumbs up, but it was like 3 weeks and I don't know, $3,000-$4,000 of extra pieces and moving around as part of that. This is one of my favorite things. The wiring was so cool. Over on the left, that was when we were going through and pulling the cable the 100 feet down from the PME down to the transformer. Large cables, heavy. It ran all the way into the field next to us because it was easier to string it that way. The amount of OCD and stuff of the electrical guy when he was putting together the transformer, I thought was awesome. I love the picture of it so much, I made it my phone desktop wallpaper as part of the process. But they did such an amazing job of it. I thought it was really cool that the care that they took when wiring up the inside of the transformer. The containers started to come together pretty quick after that, bolting on hoods, getting them lined up. Fencing and security was next. That was super important, making sure that we had a pretty good secure setup as part of where we're at. We felt great about it. The location, it was a heavy industrial area, not heavily traveled. No one ever walks by it, but I do co-location and I want to make sure we have as much security as we have out there to make sure I'm doing my best to make sure there's no issues for any chances that something could go wrong from something silly like theft. A lot of late nights, a lot of pouring rain out there on the top, going through and installing Starlink in the middle of a downpour in the middle of the night because we had to get our networking done the next day. But things started to come together really quick. Planning, year of planning. I don't know, I'd say maybe another 6 months of waiting. And then all of a sudden, we're talking maybe a few weeks, things started to just slap together really quick. Power on day was awesome. We got green tagged and went hot in the same day. So I had everyone out there. I had the inspector, I had the utility, I had our ECs, I had contractors, I had the subs. I just had people from the next door who wanted to see it and see what happens if it explodes. It was a fun day, a little nerve-wracking, but I really enjoyed that process of watching everything get kicked on with these big giant hot sticks and letting that power flow through each of the components. Cool to see a mirror at zero. It's kind of like getting a brand new car with no miles on it. Really cool process. Went in there, flipped over the breaker for the very first time, let everything warmed up, lights kicked on. It was a really cool feeling. And hearing the hum of the transformer for the first time was that we did it moment for me. The just a gentle roar of all those electrons in there ready to go through and create the best money on earth. It was a great feeling. And it was like, holy crap, this actually happened. So one of the best days I've had in a long time. And then all the fun stuff works. We're fired up. We did a little bit of load testing. I threw a couple old J-Pros in there to make sure that nothing blew up when we first did it. Tested each of the pods, fixed a couple issues that were wrong. Had some breaker issues that we had to take care of individually. Got all the Ethernet wired in there, programmed the switches, and then we started loading up. I think we brought in, on our first batch, 120 K-Pros, 120s. And then we started filling in new gen miners, XPs, 21 pluses, things like that. But there's a lot to it, a lot of steps in the process. Just to kind of give an overview of what it covered, it's grass. I literally out there with a riding lawnmower, hat on and, cutting down grass to begin with. Had to go through and clear the lot after that, scrape it down to get all that vegetation off because you don't want grass coming through your gravel. Covering it up with tarp so nothing can grow through it. 8 inches of base, big old 4-inch chunks of rock to give you a good foundation. Another cap of 4 inches on top of it to make sure that you've got good 3/4 minus to build on. Trenching and conduit. Setting those electrical components, again, was one of the funnest parts that made it seem real to me. Trenching and getting those electrical primaries done. Compacting gravel to make sure that the area that's going to be heavily traveled with big equipment and trucks isn't affecting that the cable and that conduit that's 36 inches down. The secondary, as you saw, it was a beast. I've never spent more time going 10 feet in my life. And it was a pretty good journey. And not one person there had ever experienced anything like that. So seeing the wonder of these veteran electrical people and inspectors as we're doing this was a cool thing to see. Choosing the foundation was important. Going through and just laying the slab would have cost me an extra $20,000, $30,000 on top of the cost of the slab itself. So knowing what your codes are like and what's allowed and not allowed is super important. Secondary to the switchgear, like I said, that was a monster. There were days I didn't even think it was going to be possible, but we got her. Networking, power cables. You think it's easy? I used to build networks when I was younger. Oregon State, I ran some of the very first networking cable for Cat 5 along the College of Business there. Before that, I would do BNC networks with coax cable and BNC terminators. Nothing prepared me for the sheer amount of trunks of cable of 525 Ethernet cables in a 50 by 8 foot area. It's a lot. Fencing and security, super important. We went through and thought we could do it ourselves and save some money by buying the components and then installing the poles and doing the wiring. Trust the professionals. They've been doing this for years. They made a business out of it. The quote they quote you is probably going to be a good quote. I've spent twice as much in time and labor as I would have been if I were just paid and hadn't done it 2 days. I think it ended up taking 2 weeks to get the fence all done, a couple hours here, an hour there, as part of the process. Make friends with your inspector. Of anyone, they need to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and they don't know this industry. And if they're confused, it's going to cause delays. Be communicative with them. Let them know why you're doing this, how it's happening, and make sure that the inspector is talking with your EC and the utility, and they are all on the same page. It can cause a lot of troubles if they're not. Power on. Like I said, it was a pretty cool day. Pouring rain. Probably never rained more in Oregon since I've lived here. But everyone was out there in their 6 raincoats and I'm in the big tarps, and we had all the pop-up tents over each of the heavy pieces of electrical. It was cool. Would I liked it to have been 75 degrees and sunny? Sure. But I'll never forget that day. It was a really cool day. And then honestly, once you have these things up, there's no delays. Get your butt in there and get hashing, So pre-setting all this stuff up ahead of time so that you can have, if you've already got ASICs and they're ready to go, having them already asset tagged and identified and pre-configured, to have all that ready to go. Every day you're not hashing, you're losing money. And so taking 3 weeks after you've got power on would be something that I would never recommend. Get in there and have it ready and prep all that stuff in parallel as you're doing it. All right, a couple things I want to kind of mention. It didn't go super smooth, but it was my first real Greenfield to hash build, and I thought it went pretty well. I had bookmarked out about 4 months for it. It took 6 from signing to the documents to my JPros running. I think I can actually trim that down now that I know what I'm doing with this group of people. I could get that down under 90 days. There's no doubt in my mind on that. Make a plan, stick to it, but things are going to go sideways and you just have to deal with that. Be aware of it. Trust your team. The experts are the experts for a reason, but also the odds are they may have never done anything like this before. And believe it or not, you may know more than them on a lot of the stuff. Our electrical guys had very little experience in medium voltage hookups. It just wasn't something they'd done in the Valley. They hooked up malls. They've done industrial companies, large companies, that are in the computer business. They've done these things. This is nothing like anything they've ever seen. Trust them, but also verify everything because they're not always going to make the best decisions for your build. Lead times are tough. Nail them down first thing. Go through and find out how long it's going to take to procure a transformer, a PME, fuses for the PMEs. Stupid things. The connectors that go from the cable coming from your PME into your transformer, they don't just bolt on. You need to have a special adapter that allows them to be able to be pulled off and pushed on with a hot stick. They call them load break elbows. My guys thought they could just pick them up at Platt, the local electrical store on the corner, the day before they went to go check and found out there was a 52-week lead time. Could have blown the entire project. They had no buy-in really to the project. They didn't really care because they had a lot of other projects they were behind on. And so they said, oh, well, it's just going to take a while. We're going to go do other stuff and you'll figure it out. That kind of sucked. That really did suck. So my wife, who's a procurement manager for a large company, got on with me. It was over Thanksgiving, actually. We spent most of Thanksgiving trying to find places in China, US. We ended up finding a place in Colorado that actually had 7 of them. We ordered all of them. We only needed 3. And got them shipped out there. But it was a good 3 or 4 days where I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose months on this for something stupid that they should have ordered back in June when it's November now. So know your lead times. It can ruin a whole project. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes the super tough professional guys that know how to do this, maybe they don't know everything. And maybe the guy who's just been doing odd jobs around the corner has the best solution. That was the case on going through and building our run from the transformer to our switchgear in the data center. He came up with a solution that the inspector said, yeah, that's perfect, and just built it outside of it. Cool setup. Lucky he was there. Otherwise, it could have been another 2-3 weeks before the professionals came to the same conclusion. I mentioned this a couple of times, but in where I'm at in Oregon, no one does this. There's a reason Bitcoin companies don't mine here. The permitting's expensive. The property's expensive. The power rates are not cheap. Yeah, it's hydro, which is awesome, but transmission kills you. And so you're not making the margins you would in Texas or North Dakota or Georgia or Mississippi, or where if you've got behind the meter or international. This isn't a really optimal place to set up if the bottom line goal is straight up profit. We build here because we are community minded. We're trying to help different utilities and different communities lower their power rates by raising the amount of base load they have, so they can negotiate with the power providers for lower rates across the board. Or to work in communities like the one I'm in here, where we're going to use the waste heat that comes out of the back of that data center that I built, going straight into an 80-foot greenhouse. We're able to go through and grow vegetables all year long. In the middle of the snow and the rain right now, you can't grow. And so in the greenhouse, we'll be able to have a balmy 80 degrees where we're able to go through and grow that food and donate it to the local food banks. We have a different mission than most mining companies. And it's something that really resonated with me when I was building out. And I was just happy to be able to find Abundant Mines at the right time in the right place. It's an amazing job. Every person in here has the ability to do this. It just takes reaching out to your community, talking to people like Bitcoin Mining World and Scott and everyone. You know, I don't really think this industry has competitors. What I mean by that is it is so new and we are so young. Every single person I talk to never says, I don't want to share my information, or I'm not going to tell you how to do that. Figure it out yourself. Every Bitcoin miner I've ever mentioned is excited, as I am to share with you what they did, how they did it, the tips so you can go through and do the same thing. We are at the very, very beginning of Bitcoin mining. And the more we can make it more accessible to people who are doing it in their garage, who want to go from 2 miners to 6 to 10 to 20 to 100, I want to be there to help them in any way possible. So it's challenging, but it's one of the most challenging things I've ever done, but it's also one of the most rewarding. So don't give up. If you're looking to start to do this, use the people in your community. Talk to me, talk to Scott, talk to anyone who wants to do this. I joined so many mastermind groups and boot camps. I can't even keep track of them all now. But every one of them taught me something. And every one of those people, I was able to start to kind of maybe help them out as part of the process. And now all of a sudden, I've been in this mining industry for 5 years, and I feel like I know as much as anyone else out there, which is such a great feeling to go from a guy in his garage to an industry leader in this process in 5 years. I mean, I'm not Henry Ford, but I feel like I made the same kind of progress as we went through there. So stick with it. If it's something you want to do, there's people out there to help. This is phase 2. So we went through and we're already mining on phase 1 that I went through and showed you. Right next to it, we're going through and laying the base, and hopefully in about 3 months, We'll met our load profile schedule for the utility, and they're going to allow us to chunk on another 1.5 megawatts. So this build's going to happen in parallel right next to it. It's a copy paste. Same document, engineered document, same containers, same setup, same contractor, same EC. I'm going to take it from 6 months down to under 90 days. And I'll be back here in 3 months to show you how I did it. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciated chatting with you and kind of sharing my journey on that process. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to go through and help answer them.
Dude, Joe, thank you so much for that very insightful presentation. I want to highlight for the audience that this is possible. There are a lot of roadblocks. There are a lot of things that you have to overcome, especially if it's your first build. But having the community, having people around you who have done the same thing or similar things is pivotal. And that's why we do this mastermind. That's why Bitcoin Mining World does our virtual conference, our in-person conference. That's why we provide this education, because we want to help you grow and build your Bitcoin mining world. So Joe, I just want to one more time thank you so much for everything that you've done for us at Bitcoin Mining World, for me personally, for our community. Guys, we are going to be answering Joe's questions. Joe Ford, Alex, I love that. That's amazing. Joe Ford, we're going to be answering your questions. I've got a few questions that have come in, but if you have any questions for Joe, please send them in the chat. We're going to make sure that happens. But before we do, you no longer have any opportunities to jump in on that cryo block giveaway, because we are going to be doing it live. Let me share my screen. You guys can see, win a cryo block hybrid unit. I got to pull this up on my other screen over here. So I'm going to be drawing a winner, and hopefully it's one of you guys that are watching this right now live. Otherwise, I apologize, but we don't pick the winners. The winner is randomly chosen through our viral sweep account, but I'm going to click draw here. All right, let's go. Oh, it's got a countdown for us. All right, it's 9, 8, 7. Oh, it's really slow. 6, 5.
You're dropping the
4,
ball on New Year's Eve.
3. We're dropping a cryo block on Valentine's Day. Let's go. Who is it? All right. Amanda P from Melbourne, Florida. All right, Amanda P, I will get your email. I will send you an email. I don't know if you're watching this live, but if you are, you're going to get an email. We're going to communicate with Ryan over at CryoBite, and we will get you a CryoBlock hybrid unit. All right, guys, I'm going to remove this, not share my screen. All right. So let's see, any other questions? I don't see any questions coming in. Come on, guys, ask some questions. We've got a couple over here. I'm going to start. Patrick Patel. I assume you had a fiat job. How did you make the transition to this full time?
It wasn't easy. I was essentially running the robotics company, and COVID helped. It wasn't really an in-person job after COVID, so we kind of moved to virtual environments and stuff like that. So I wasn't having to be at a desk from 9 to 5. And so I did a lot of my education during COVID, because essentially the company shut down. So from when we shut down to all the way through till the end of the year, really, is when I started to dive into Bitcoin. I was working from home, a lot of free time. I mean, literally, we didn't do anything till June. So I had gone down that rabbit hole in every podcast, learned the players in the industry, read the books, bought an entire bookshelf worth of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining books and stuff. And so I learned a lot during that process. And then when I went back to work, it was so easy, virtual. I mean, I could go through and work. The efficiencies it created when you're not in an office is amazing. I could do 9 hours worth of work in 4 or 5 hours. So that COVID was really the way that I was able to transition doing both. And the more time I spent in the Bitcoin mining industry, the less time I enjoyed going to my fiat job. Even if it was virtual, I didn't get joy from it. Something that I enjoy. It was great. I taught kids. I had 10,000 kids a summer that I would teach how to use coding and robotics. And it was, don't get me wrong, I did it for a lot of great reasons, but the impact I was making there, I didn't think was near the impact I'm going to be able to make in building the best co-location company in the world. That is huge to me, because every single person that kind of signs up with Abundant Minds and starts mining, we're orange pilling them through mining. You know, they may try to do and make fiat money, but the education that we give is part of it. We do monthly webinars like you guys do. And it was just amazing to be able to see these people want to come in as an investing and all of a sudden like learn what money is and why it's important and how Bitcoin can change their lives.
And,
so, yeah,
and
staggering the time off from COVID.
Yeah, something you had said to me, back when we first met, is the bar for hosting companies is very low. And I'm not going to call out any names because that's not what we do here. But when you send a $5,000 piece of machinery equipment to a company, let alone 50 of them, you really want to know that they're taking care of your machines. You want to know that they're cleaning them, maintaining them. They're communicating with you when something goes wrong. And so that bar is really low. And I remember you telling me, Joe, that you were setting out to change this. And I truly believe that this is something that you're doing with Abundant Minds. So I am here for it. I love to see what you're doing. I know that you're only, a couple hours away from me, but I'm going to send some machines over to you here soon and get them hosted with you guys because you guys just do such a great job, and I can't build a mining facility at my house. So
I've been to your place. You cannot build any more power than you're already taking now.
Exactly. It's too small. All right. We got a couple more questions.
We got some finance questions I want to tackle. I know it's important.
Yeah. Let's see. So Patrick also asked, also curious about how you acquired capital for building out your site. Now, before you answer this, I think Alex also, you could probably tie this in. Alex also asks, how did you pitch to investors? So how did you acquire capital for you building out your site, and how did you pitch this to investors?
Dwayne also had something very similar on the bottom about financing, about not selling your Bitcoin. How the heck do you do that and actually get financing? Because it all ties together. The nice part about this one is I was able to go through and get a construction loan. Construction loans are pretty awesome. They'll go through and float the whole project for you as part of it. So they'll pay for all the equipment, the land, everything. It's interest-only loan until the project is completed. Once the project is completed, then they go through and start charging you full principal and interest. I used a local community bank. Because I bank with US Bank, which they wouldn't even look at me. It was really bad. They wouldn't do any kind of funding. I've been with them for 25 years, ran my entire other business through them. They just, no, had nothing to do with it. Local bank in Eugene, Oregon, actually, just a community bank. I think they have 2 branches and only lend out in their area. Went and talked to them about the project, showed them pro forma, explained this is what I'm doing. I was a little less forthcoming about it being Bitcoin. I talked about data centers and AI and high power compute. Directionally, it's truthful. But as you know, mentioning Bitcoin to banks can be a big no-no. At the end, he knows now, and he's totally cool with it. But I was being a little cautious about that. And I highly recommend that. Just be very careful. Don't walk in there and say, I'm a crypto bro, give me some money. Be cautious on how you present it. And I was able to get in for 20% down, which on the land, not on the whole project, just on the land. And I had saved that up over the last couple of years, knowing I wanted to do this project. It wasn't really that much money. I talked about other ways I could have done it. We could have done a home equity loan on, again, don't tell your banks to do this, but we could have done a home equity line of credit on our house, use that money for the down payment on the other loan, but I'd saved up. So that worked out really well. I also applied for SBA, and believe it or not, I got it. I went through the SBA process to go through and do this for the infrastructure as a mobile data center. They would pay for the whole thing. The catch was it was a 9.5% loan. And as much as I wanted to do the SBA truly and show people that it's doable, I got the acceptance letter, but I turned it down and went with this community loan, which was 6.5. So yeah, so the whole idea of that you can't get funding for this isn't true. It's about how you present it to the banks. Don't say crypto, don't say Bitcoin, use mobile data centers. They now know what AI is. My banks didn't even know what AI was in 22. So now at least you've got momentum that you walk in, they'll know what it is.
So what are, banks are a little bit different than seeking outside investment. What are some strategies? I'm not sure if you pitched this to investors or not, but do you have any strategies for pitching to, VCs or just investors in general?
Yeah. Having a clear financial package is really the key. It's tough when you don't have any revenues, any experience, any previous success history to be able to go in there. So if you have another business that you're pivoting over to it, use that as kind of part of it. So if you've been in real estate, if you've been in construction, if you've been in some other even software business that's semi possibly related, use that as your company that you're working for as you pitch this. Starting from ground zero, where you've just formed your LLC on a Tuesday and you're trying to pitch this PowerPoint deck on a Thursday with some spreadsheets you made up, I haven't seen a lot of success in that. So having history helps from previous jobs. Abundant Minds, the CEO, Bo there, he had a very rich history in real estate, commercial real estate, and he used that as the building blocks for building Abundant Minds to start with. It made every conversation easier because he had that history.
For sure. So a couple other questions related to funding. I think funding is one of the biggest things that people are kind of struggling with right now to get financing for building out these farms. The first one is right here from Brennan. Have you ever tried getting funds for generators?
Yeah, transformers. For gen sets, no. But for transformers and anything that is honestly traditionally used in regular environments that are not Bitcoin, yeah, people look at these things, and when I say people, banks, they know what the resale value is. They could open up page 86 on their book of Am I Gonna Lend to You and see that I can get 80 cents on the dollar or 90 cents on the dollar for a transformer if you default. Same with the genset. There's lots of applications for them. They can look that stuff up. The reason they don't lend on ASICs is there's no page in that book that tells them what that salvage value of an ASIC is. And as we all know, the salvage value of the ASIC could be 5% if it's not done right. So yeah, you can absolutely do that.
For sure. Awesome. So let's see here. There's one more that we have related to loans and funding. And this is from Alex Churchill. And it's kind of in three different parts, but I'll share this up on the screen. Can you still get loans with bad credit? He also says he's got no assets and he has no experience. So, is this possible? Can you get a loan with bad credit? Can you do it with no experience, no assets?
Yes, but I'm going to caveat all that. No, you can't. But the thing is there are lots of other people who want to do this who don't have your passion, Alex. Like, I've met with you. I've talked with you. You have the ability to go through and take what you know, your knowledge you're gaining. That is an asset to someone else who has money, doesn't have a lot of time, and has good credit. And you could create a partnership with them. Say, look, this is what I could bring to the table. This is what you could bring to the table. Let's do this thing together. I will go through and be your guy in the field. I'll be the guy doing the research. You be the check guy, and we'll go through and do profit share at the end. Creating a partnership is one of the best ways to do it if you don't have the best credit. I will say, literally a week ago, a month ago now, had I not had good credit, I was going to have to pay a $98,000 power deposit with my utility at the last minute. They turned it on, and when I got my first bill, right as they were writing the bill, they realized, hey, we didn't ask you for a power deposit. And I'm like, all right, well, what do you need? Well, it's your full load max, and we need to have that, even though you're not ramped up to it yet. So that was like $98,000. And I said, well, that seems pretty something you should have brought into my attention the other day. And so we talked back and forth about it. And they said, well, it's because you're a business and you haven't done this before with this particular industry or worked with us before like that. If it was personal, we could just run your credit. Why didn't you lead with that, Janelle? And so I went through and gave her my credit, took the bill out of my business name, put it into my personal name, ran the credit. 5 seconds later, okay, here's your bill. You're all good, Joe. And I didn't have to put down a power deposit. So little things like that, it really does help. Work towards it. There are so many programs out there to improve your credit. It doesn't take like it used to. It used to take years to get that better. Do some research, do some credit repair, work towards it, get a credit card, get that thing up there.
Something I want to go back to something that you said, talking about trying to reach out to the money guy. Maybe he doesn't have this information about Bitcoin mining. What are some strategies that you have to find these people and also give them the rough idea of how Bitcoin works so that they can feel confident in their investment?
It's a good question. I start out with angel investors. So an angel investor are, people that maybe in the community, people who aren't like super seasoned investing, but they're people that have made themselves known in local communities like real estate investment groups and stuff like that, that say they're looking to go through and invest in projects. There are so many parallels between Bitcoin mining and real estate. It's crazy. We even refer to our little spaces that we co-locate out as micro condos. And we're going through and renting them out for power and internet in a 1 foot by 1 foot spot, And there are so many people in real estate who have funds, have the ability to go through and get these lines of credits and do these projects, and they're looking for their next investment. Who's to say their next investment has to be a 8-plex or a single family home? Go through and have them share what you're trying to do. Go to these things and say, hey, have you guys ever looked at it? Look at the returns that you can get on a Bitcoin mining business versus the $100 a door you make in single family homes. Look at that. Compare these numbers on your ROI. The ROI time. It may take you 20 years to ROI on a single family home, whereas it could take you 3 years to ROI on a Bitcoin mining farm, if that.
Yeah, that's a
They're
great
not used to those types of returns. So I'd hit up local investment groups is where I would start. It's easy. You're in person. Your ness, what shines through in you is something that you can show there. Hitting up people on DMs on LinkedIn is really tough. Finding professional investment groups is tough. There's 18,000 other people that are pitching different ideas that are probably better than yours because you don't have experience in it. But local groups with investing groups and even Lions clubs. I mean, I've seen Kiwanis clubs going there and talking to people there. These are old people who are bored out of their mind. And you're about to show them the coolest industry in the world. And they have their life savings they have nothing to do with. There's your angel investor. Just be creative on finding financing. Talk to people. The more you talk, my contractor knew nothing about this. His guy, his best friend just exited his business for 7 figures. High 7 figures. And I'm pitching him next week on the next development and him investing not just into mining itself, but actually building out the site with me.
What I'm hearing, Joe, is I need to go down to my local golf club and, try to pitch this to some of the guys with money.
Don't be shy. No one knows about this. No one's turning on CNN and learning how to build a Bitcoin mine. They don't even know what it is. They see what the talking heads talk about. Bitcoin's volatile and it's using up all the energy in the world. We're all going to burn to death. That's not Bitcoin mining. That's a narrative that was built in 2017 by groups that didn't want Bitcoin to succeed. Yeah. Simple as that.
I think the main point to highlight here is to get out there. We've heard shake your rancher's hand, shake your farmer's hand, shake your investor's hand. Get out there, and if you're going to make a deal that has a lot of money on the table, understand what you're trying to pitch and then pitch it in person. Make sure you're shaking the person's hand so that you can show them and talk to them. I think that's really important.
I want to put a parallel in there. I don't know if people, I don't have time to watch TV much anymore, but there's a show I watched a couple months ago. It's been on just recently called Landman with Billy Bob Thornton. And it's basically about his journey in running oil rigs out in Texas. And there's a lot of good parallels there between doing that and Bitcoin mining. And one of the characters in there at the end is trying to make his own way, not ride his dad's coattails and try to do his own thing in that industry. And it was exactly that. He literally went through and started talking to these individual people that had money, had land, had the resources he was looking for, went to their property, looked them in the eye, shook their hands, and it's the same. We are miners, and get out there and talk to people.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, last question. This is from Giovanni. Giovanni asks, hey, Joe, have you tried setting up a mining farm on an energy production site?
I was so happy that you went through and asked this question. Near and dear to my heart, Giovanni. That is why I'm trying to do this. I think if you talk to more and more people in the Bitcoin mining industry, we're going to be incentivized to get behind the meter as opposed to buying energy on grid. I think Bitcoin mining is just eventually going to have to go that route. The CEO of Abundant Minds, Bo, he's tasked me with going through and for every megawatt we put on grid, I have to go through and build something behind the meter. And so I'm currently in talks with several different locations to do all different types of energy production. So landfill gas is one, anaerobic digestion is another, stranded hydro is one of them. And then we're going through and looking at other ways we could go through and integrate with solar in different parts of the Pacific Northwest. Not the best place for solar, but if you get over the mountains and stuff like that and head to Eastern Oregon, there are some pretty prime spots where land is cheap and the sun is plentiful that we're looking on how we can go through and do those projects. So I absolutely would love to talk to anyone who's got energy generation or behind the meter sources, because it's my job. I need to go through and start building out more of that so that we can kind of go in the direction that we need to.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Guys, this is, oh, I shared it again. Oops. This has been the MasterMINED Club. We do this every other Friday. We might start doing it every Friday. I don't know. We still kind of got it up in the air, but either way, our goal here at Bitcoin Mining World is to give you the educational foundation to go out and build your Bitcoin mining dreams. Joe is someone who has done this. He has taken his dreams and manifested them into reality. And I highly encourage all of you to do the same. Get off zero, just start. So with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this conversation, this presentation. Don't forget to get your Bitcoin Mining World virtual conference tickets. I shared that in the chat, so go to that link. It's $21. March 11th from 8 a.m. Central Time to 7 p.m. Central Time. We have tons of speakers coming, and you guys are going to get a lot of value from those conversations, and you're going to be able to ask questions and talk with the presenters as well. So with that, we will see you in a couple of weeks. We have something planned around solar generation mining. It's going to be a good time. I haven't completely fleshed it out, but when I do have that fleshed out, I'll share it in the MasterMINED Club chat. Make sure that you're going to that link to join the MasterMINED Club. Join us every other week and, get the opportunity to speak with people like Joe in a virtual setting. So, all right, guys, I really appreciate all that you do. Joe, I'm so thankful for you. I really appreciate you, brother. I'll be out to your mining operation here pretty soon. We'll say hi. We'll have some lunch.
I love to hear it. And anyone in the chat, if you had any questions, or like I know Brennan, you wanted to get in touch and stuff like that, reach out to me via email. I just dropped the email in the chat. Anyone who's got awesome energy sources, I'd love to have a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you for joining us in the MasterMINED Club, your ultimate gateway into the world of Bitcoin mining. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale your operations, our vibrant community of like-minded enthusiasts is here to support you every step of the way. Join us next week where you'll exchange ideas, brainstorm strategies, and stay motivated on your mining journey. Thank you for joining us, and tune in next week.
Awesome, Joe.